shouldn't be.
Yeah, we have a quorum, Commissioner, so we can go ahead with the roll call.
Okay, I'll call the meeting to order, 9:31 a.m. on April 10th. And I'll start by taking a roll of the commissioners. Looks like I see Commissioner Metropolis in the room.
Yes.
Commissioner Morris.
Yeah, here.
Commissioner Taylor. Is Jana going to be joining us?
He will not be joining us today.
Okay. Will this be, I'm assuming Tony will not be joining as well?
That's correct.
Okay. So with 3 members present, we have a quorum. At this point, I might save public comment till the end here. I'd like to maybe turn it over to Director Brown I haven't been in the loop or someone to, fill us in on kind of what's going on. I know we've had you guys have had an unfortunate loss in the lottery, and I was sorry to hear about Armand. I've known him since I was on the commission, and yeah, that was a tough call. And I just am curious to get a general update on kind of what the status is with the finances before we get to Chet and the report.
Director Brown does have a statement as well. So,
okay. Do you want to get into the report first then, or just go into the Director Brown statement?
I think we should probably just have Director Brown.
Okay.
I just want to say thanks to everybody for joining us. It's kind of an odd time for us and an odd schedule, but thanks to the commissioners and everybody that's joining us today. We appreciate you being here. And I do feel it's important to start my update with some unfortunate news that, as many of you may know, on March 9th, Armand Sargent, our financial director of 12 years, passed away unexpectedly. To all of those that worked with him and to his family, we extend our heartfelt condolences. Armand was a valued employee of the agency, and he will be greatly missed. Along that same vein, Armand vacated an important and vital position within the organization. We are actively recruiting to fill our finance director position. The financial position of the agency is of the utmost importance, and we are seeking the right person to join our team. And with that, next, I would just like to introduce Chet McLean, Internal Controls Coordinator for the Governor's Office of Budget and Program Planning, and extend our thanks out to them as well. It's just, it's invaluable that they can come alongside us and help us out in this really a time of need. So with that, as we transition to a new financial director, Chet's been here to help us out and be sure that we're keeping things straight. And with that, I will present Mr. Chet McLean from the Governor's Office.
Okay.
Hello, Chet.
Hey there, Chairman. Chairman, members of the Commission. So as indicated, I'm Chet McLean. I'm with the Governor's Office Budget Program Planning. My job in the Governor's Office is to be a resource to agencies like yourselves for various compliance, accounting, internal control type issues. So when I first heard about the unfortunate events about 3 weeks ago, it didn't take me long to think to myself, yeah, lottery could probably use a helping hand right now. So when we have a key financial person vacate from an organization, that has the potential to create a lot of distress for our organization. It's particularly because when you have somebody that's been in their position for a long time, say 12 years, a lot of the processes and procedures that they would normally apply or memorize, they're up in their head. And that's kind of the situation that we have here. It became evident fairly quickly that there some of the things that were being done to prepare the financial statements were, like I said, memorized. And so picking up the pieces where he left off is a little bit of a challenge for anybody. And me, somebody who prepares financial statements on a regular basis for entities across the state, even for me, it was, and I want to give a shout out to staff. They've been very accommodating to help answer my questions and stepping up, doing what they could to help me understand some of the transactions, the journal entries, and what I needed to learn to prepare the financial statements. So the financial statements that I'm presenting to you today, I need to introduce with a couple of preliminary comments. And I suppose ultimately what I want you to understand as the commission is that these financial statements have at least one known misstatement. And there is some limited reliability to the financials that I prepared. And there's a couple reasons for that limited reliability. One is time. I just learned about this situation 3 weeks ago. And so in the interest of time, there were several decisions that in consultation with management that we decided to make so that we could get a set of financials prepared and presented to you. Another situation or a circumstance that I want you to be aware of for why the financials might lack a little bit of reliability is I observed several irregularities in the accounting system as well as in the financial reports that were presented to the commission in the past. Two examples. One, the June 30th, 2024 financial statements, as well as the September 30th, 2024 financial statements on their face didn't balance. Now, I want you to think a little bit like an accountant for a moment, as uncomfortable or as unwanted as that might be. But when an accountant says they're out of balance, that's actually kind of a big deal from my perspective. When I saw that the June 30th financial statements didn't balance, even by a small number, about $115,000, my blood pressure certainly rose. Why didn't the financial statements balance? Why didn't assets equal liabilities plus equity? And like I said, it was out by a small amount. But when I looked at the the September 30th financials, they were out of balance by about $5 million. So a much bigger number. And the question is, why? Right? Why don't the financials balance? And I don't want to go into a lot of details about the answer to that. And part of the reason I don't want to go into a lot of the details is because part of my answer would be speculation. I don't want to speculate. I did not audit these financial statements. I only prepared these financial statements. And I prepared these financial statements based on the data that was available to us, which is the same, that's in the accounting system. Another circumstance that I want to bring your attention to is we could see right away when looking at the Sabres data, the accounting data that's in your accounting system, that there were several journals that either were delayed by several months in their posting or they were not posted at all. And it primarily related to the revenues that are recognized by the entity, by the lottery. And the delay is probably not as egregious of a situation as simply not being posted. So for two examples that I'll mention, one is Montana Millionaire. So we all know that the lottery had a very successful game in November and December. I think the lottery really deserves a pat on the back for Montana Millionaire. Montana came out in big numbers. It sold out within 2.5 to 3 hours or something. A really phenomenal, exciting event that you guys put on. So good job on that. The drawing for that was December 26th, so within the quarter that I'm presenting financial information. We prepared the financial statements, I should say, I prepared the financial statements pretty much last week, but after I prepared the financial statements this week, I was looking at the financial numbers, and you'll see this here in a few minutes, but I saw a big fat zero for Montana. So the revenue journal to recognize the Montana Millionaire revenues was not posted until just this week. So they are not reflected in the financial statements that I'm presenting to you. And so that is a known misstatement financials that I'm presenting today. The $10 million in revenues that the lottery generated from that game will be reflected in the next quarter's financial statements. I'll also mention sports betting revenue. So between the months of March and November of 2024, when I was looking at the Sabres data, the accounting system data, I did not see any journals posted for those revenues. And so that's concerning, right? Because that's a significant source of revenues. Why weren't they posted? So we quickly dived into that, and staff did what they needed to do to figure out, oh, here's those journals, and we've got those journals now posted into the financials. But it was concerning nevertheless that those journals weren't posted, and they were just posted within the last 3 weeks or so. So those circumstances, I wanted to bring the commission's awareness to, that there are some irregularities in the financial statements that lead me to want to mention to you that, the financials that I am presenting to you may have some limited reliability. Though I will say that all of the revenues, we're feeling fairly confident at this point that we've cleaned up a lot of the issues, and all of the revenues have been posted into the financial system at this point. It's just that, for example, the Montana Millionaires, those revenues are going to flow through the next quarter's financial statements and are not reflected in these financials. To say that a different way, we're confident that all of the revenues have been posted to the accounting system at this point in time. So we've cleaned up, or perhaps use the word fixed, some of the irregularities that we have unearthed in the last few weeks. I'll pause there if there's any questions from the commission.
No, thanks, Chet. Yeah, that's pretty concerning. And just looking at these financials that we're about to go over, they look quite a bit different than what we're used to seeing as well. So, yeah, I had heard from Brian, a while ago that there was some issues with some of this financial reporting, but it was kind of getting sorted out. Armand was coming back along, and then it was going to, get cleaned up. But it sounds like, obviously, with Armand's health, that it sounds like that just never happened. So, yeah, thanks for stepping in here and getting this going. Any other questions from the commission?
I just have to say it catches me by surprise. So I may have a question later when I can think about it, but nothing comes to mind right now.
Okay, so I'll just get back to my spiel then, I guess. I wanted to mention one more thing for the commission's consideration and awareness. So we had some time constraints here. We also had some irregularities that we were seeing. And so we made some judgment calls at the beginning of this process, 3 weeks ago. One of those judgment calls was decided that it would be prudent to be conservative. And when I use that word conservative, I'm actually mean low risk. Be prudent of us to make a recommendation for a general fund transfer this quarter that would be lower than perhaps would be the numbers would justify, because we have irregularities, we have time constraints, everybody was on board with that idea. I did communicate with the folk in the budget office where I work and let them know that we were going to make a possibly lower general fund transfer this quarter than would normally be made in the interest of mitigating risk. And they were on board with that. And I have notified at least one staff member of the Legislative Fiscal Division of the legislative branch that the general fund transfer will be lower than perhaps the numbers would justify. And everybody so far has been agreeable to that concept. And, we have time. We have 2 more quarters before the end of the fiscal year to sort out some of these accounting irregularities and make sure that we're transferring the correct amount. So it's my expectation by June 30th of 2025 that the full amount that should have been transferred to the general fund into the STEM project program will have been made. So let me jump into the financials then at this point. If you want to go to page 2, which is your balance sheet. Sorry, is there a question? No. Okay. I'll just go through the financial statements page by page and section by section. On your current assets, the first section, you'll see that you have approximately $15 million of current assets. That's roughly $2 million lower than last year's second quarter. So a $2 million decrease, just to give you all some context, is fairly immaterial. The total change represents 4% of the revenues for this quarter, so fairly small. $1 million of that $2 million change since last year is in cash, and 1 million of that is in receipt. So I'm not concerned about the change there. For the next section, non-current assets, these are your long-term assets. These are like your fixed assets, computer equipment, buildings, and whatnot. The change is fairly stable or similar to what you were reporting last year. And so the change between last year and this year is primarily due to non-cash transactions such as depreciation and amortization. So again, there's not anything unusual or alarming there. Current liabilities in the next section, you have $13.7 million of liabilities. That's approximately a $2 million decrease from last year's second quarter. The change is primarily focused in your estimated prize liability. For context, I'll mention that I saw that there is a corresponding decrease in your revenues. And so that is indicative of reasonableness, to say it that way. It's not unreasonable that you would have both a decrease in your estimated prize liability and a decrease in your revenues at the same time. So again, that's not a concern for me. The transfer obligation in your liability section, this warrants a little bit extra explanation. So this is the amount that you owe to the general fund and to the STEM program. As I indicated earlier, there was a decision made early to recommend to you all a lower general fund transfer. But the other thing I want to mention about the transfer obligation this quarter is it's actually 2 quarters worth. The quarter 1 transfer, which was determined to be about $4.25 million, hadn't been recognized in the accounting system as of December 31st, 2024. And so as of December 31st, 2024, you still owe the general fund and the OCHI $4.25 million. So add on top of that the $3 million that we're recommending today for general fund transfer, as well as the $562 for the STEM transfer. That's how we get to that number that we're seeing for transfer obligations for the current period of $7.8 million.
Can I ask a question?
Yes.
Did you say it was from quarter 1 of 24 that wasn't?
I meant to say 25 if I said 24. So the first quarter for 25 had not been actually transferred yet. And then we're recommending another $3.6 million to be transferred in quarter 2 of 2025. Another thing that I wanted to mention on the transfer, and this is actually an irregularity that I think the management's gonna need to figure out over the next couple months. It's happened several times over the last couple of years that the commission would approve a transfer. Let's just say hypothetically $5 million, around number. But the cash available to the commission at the time was less than the amount that was approved for the transfer. Let's say $4 million. So you approved sometimes a $5 million transfer. You only had $4 million in the bank to make the transfer. And so that is an irregularity or a circumstance that I think management needs to start thinking about and figuring out why don't you have enough cash available to make the transfer. And sometimes it would result in several months of delay before that transfer would actually get posted. And I think it's all related. I'm speculating a little bit here, so I need to be careful. But I believe that it's related in part to some of the journals not being posted that I indicated earlier, and the delay of some of the journals not being posted. So there's kind of a cash flow versus accrual basis accounting discrepancy here in the amount of the transfers. So when we estimated what the transfer should be for this quarter, we could see that there was about $4.4 million in the bank that was available. We subtracted from that your current liabilities about $775,000. And that resulted about $3.6 million available for transfer. And so that's why we set that number at $3.6 million for this quarter's transfer. Okay. If there's no questions, I'll go ahead and move forward. Non-current liabilities, the next section on your balance sheet. I didn't see anything really all that interesting here. The bulk of the non-current liabilities are your long-term employee benefit liabilities, like compensated absences or your pension. Also, there's the non-current portion of your prize liability that remains stable at about $930,000. So nothing surprising, usual in your long-term liabilities. Flipping to page 3 of the financials, this is your income statement. I saw about $45.5 million of revenues for the current quarter. That is a decrease of about $3 million compared to this time last year. That's a decrease of about 6.25%. Take note of that number. I'll come back to it in a moment. But to kind of break up some of the games here, Scratch increased by 24%, Powerball decreased by 54%, Montana Cash decreased by 44%, Montana Millionaire, there's that big fat zero that I was talking about earlier. That is a known misstatement in these financials, but will flow through the next quarter's financials. Mega Millions decreased by 7.2%, Treasure Play increased by 8%, Lotto for Life increased by 5%. Sports betting increased by 21%. A couple of the bigger numbers, I suppose, that are interesting is Powerball. Why did it decrease by 54%? Montana Cash, why did it decrease by 44%? And sports betting, why did it decrease by 21%? I'd be speculating if I said it had to do with the delay in the journal entries. So I need to be careful about speculation. So that's my running hypothesis that I haven't adequately tested at this point. Direct game costs, the next section in the financials, they decreased by approximately $1 million or 1.2%. I asked you to take note of the 6.25% decrease in your revenues from the prior section. Contrast that with the 1.2% decrease in your direct game costs. There's a misalignment between the amount of the direct game costs. The change in the direct game costs does not correspond with the decrease in your revenues. And I wanted to draw that to your attention because it all relates to this same issue that I'm kind of hammering on, that because there was a delay in the revenue journals, we see a greater decrease in the revenues reported than you see in the expenditures. To say that a little bit differently, I have much more confidence in the expenditures that are being reported in these financial statements than in the revenues. Which is possibly a good sign, actually, because, if there's a place where alarming problems would be realized, it's oftentimes on the expenditure side. And expenditures are showing fairly stable results, which is good. Although the issue in the revenue side is certainly not benign. The next section, operating expenses, you're going to see a similar kind of assessment that there's more stable operating expenses of 1.3 million are similar to this time last year. So, again, to support that assessment that expenditures are more reliable than the final section that I want to talk about on the income statement is your the bottom portion there, the change in net income. Because we estimated or making a recommendation to the commission of a smaller general fund transfer than the numbers would justify, we see an increase to your net position for this period of about $1.9 million. You can see that on the third column there. Normally, the lottery would not have an increase to your net position. Normally, because statute requires all of your net income to be transferred to the general fund or to the STEM program, you would not have an increase. But we decided to be conservative with the general fund transfer this quarter, and so that resulted in an increase to your bottom line, to your net position of $1.9 million. I expect by the time you get to June 30th of 2025, that will have reversed because by that point, we'll have sorted out some of the accounting irregularities at that point. And the full amount that should have been transferred to the general fund and to the STEM program will have been made. So that's one thing I wanted to bring your attention to. And I guess I'll mention this too. Notice that it says negative 404 for a total ending net position. Normally, your net position should be sitting around negative $2.4 million or negative $2.3 million. And what that represents is your actuarially determined pension liability or employee benefit liabilities like pension, like OPEB. And so I just wanted to mention that I'm not concerned that normally you have a negative net position of about $2.4 million. But where it says negative negative 400,000 currently, that's, $1.9 million too high, essentially because we increased funds. I also want to mention down here in this part of the section that we have a $2.8 million prior period adjustment. So the financials for September 30th of 2024 had a computational error in them. They didn't balance, and that error is being reflected here in the prior period adjustment of $2.8 million. To give a little more detail about what was going on in the September 30th financial statements, on the income statement, normally it works very simply like revenues minus expenses equal your net income. When we looked at the numbers on the September 30th income statement, revenues minus expenses should have equaled about $7 million, but what was shown on the financials was $4 million. And the difference was $2.8 million. And so I'm reflecting that here on the financial schedule as a prior period adjustment, just so that the net position beginning numbers tie to those prior numbers. And it's really just kind of an accounting entry to give you some context to what's happening. Lastly, I'll mention, because I know this was reported to you in the past, I feel like it's somewhat useful information. The second quarter general fund transfer of $3.6 million represents 7.8% of the revenues that are being recognized in the financial statements. Last quarter, it was 12.6. So again, you can see how we're being a bit conservative in a number. It's a smaller portion of your revenues. To date, the transfers represent about 9.9% of the generated. Flipping to the next page, your budgetary schedule. I should pause. Is there any questions at this point?
Yeah, Chet, I have a couple questions. On when we're saying, the revenue, when you're saying the revenue journals weren't updated and that sort of thing, I mean, is that merely just like an accounting thing that the books were not, properly being updated and the revenue was there like from a practical perspective, like in a bank account, it just wasn't hitting the books, or was the revenue not there at all, or was it sitting in like an undeposited account or in a customer account, or I mean the vendor account or something? Can you just walk me through a little bit of that on a high level if you could?
Yeah, so I think your first characterization is accurate and your second was not the case. So on the cash side, I can see all of the cash coming in, right?
Okay.
In the lottery's cash processes are separate, handled by different people than the revenue journals. And so I can see that the cash is here. You have the cash. It was the fact that the journals weren't hitting the books, as you said.
Okay.
So that actually is reassuring. That was certainly one of the first things I looked at. So do we have the cash? Yes, you do.
And looking at this, one of the things just on this P&L, like the 732,000 in Powerball. I mean, is that accurate? I mean, was it down that much? I mean, because looking at these past quarters, I mean, that's always been, millions of dollars of revenue, because I do have I pulled up these past financials that you're referencing, Chet, like the, June 30th and September 30th, the last year. I mean, they were all, Powerball was up in that, sales in the Powerball of a bad month is 3 or 4 million, but and was it down that far? Is that just an issue of this revenue journal not being updated on that?
So Commissioner Prigge, yes, Powerball is down. It is down in comparison to the last year's because we had probably $2 billion plus jackpots the year prior, and this year we've had none. So
Okay.
we are seeing, in comparison, it looks very, off. It's definitely a major decrease because of those jackpots, and that's not only for Powerball but also for Mega Millions, and so those two in particular are seeing a bigger decrease because of those jackpot performance.
Okay. And Chet, again, one more for you, just to speculate on like these, these other financials. I'm looking at them, these back ones. Do you think that? I'm assuming that this PDF that gets sent to us, was he just like, were there numbers that were just being like hard entered into there? Were there actually journal entries on the books to get, like you said, I mean, it just just from a functional standpoint on an accounting system, it's hard, like even just using like QuickBooks to come up with a balance sheet that doesn't balance unless you're hard entering a number in there or something. And I guess that's just something that you're looking at a financial statement, I guess, unless you're really looking for something wrong, where you would actually do the math to see that it didn't balance, or that the P&L didn't add up. Were these like hard entered into there, or were they, was it just these errors in the updating the journals, or was he just, because it just, looking back at it, I can see exactly what you're talking about, running the math on this, on the September 2024 one. But I don't know that I would have caught that in the room, or it would have jumped out of me, just because I guess I'm just assuming that the math is working out. But can you walk me through a little bit on like what you think might happen there?
Yeah, be glad to. Yeah, so there's actually, in addition to everything I've mentioned about the delayed journals being posted, and then occasionally the journals not being posted at all. When I first grabbed the workbook, the Excel workbook that was being used for preparing the financial statements. I dove into it and I started looking at all of the formulas and the rows and the cells and the numbers and the allocation percentages. And I saw several different issues. One of them was, as you indicated, sometimes numbers were hard coded in. And that can be an issue, especially if you have an Excel workbook that relies on a lot of formulas and cell references and these kinds of things. So there was some of that, but there was also some hidden rows. And those hidden rows included some old data. And they were being added into the totals, even though it was old financial information from, like, say, prior quarters. And so that was resulting in part of the issue. And then I found some formulas that were flawed. They included wrong percentages. So, for example, oftentimes when you allocate something, you allocate out 100% to several different line items. And so 50% will go to one line, 25% will go to another line, another 25% will go to another line. It adds up to 100, but I found some of these allocation percentages that were adding up to more than. And so there was quite a few different circumstances like that was leading to some of the irregularities in the prior.
Okay. And on the, just in the past, these books will get audited every year throughout the year by Legislative Audit Division. I mean, was this really just these first two fiscal quarters that happened and they didn't, there wasn't any, I mean, I'm assuming they would have noticed this irregularities if this had been going on a long time, or was this just truly a function of Armand, not being well the past few months?
I cannot answer that question, Commissioner, because I only had enough time to really look at June 30th and September 30th. And so I did not go back before June 30th of 2024.
But even on that June 30th one, right, is that audit underway, Director Brown, or do you know whether I saw, there was some internal controls questions that came out of that I saw recently. But I haven't seen, I'm assuming that stuff would be addressed in that final June 30th audit report, which I would assume has got to be wrapping up, right? Pretty soon, since
Yeah, I see Brian Costigan has his hand raised. I'm going to allow him to speak.
okay.
I think Mike just promoted him. Give him a second.
Can you guys hear me now?
Yes.
Okay. So yeah, they're wrapping up the financial audits right now. And we'll see what comes out of it. We haven't gotten any results back. We've made we've been providing them the information that they've requested and working with them to come up with it. What they think they need. The other piece too is legislative audit is obviously aware of what happened. I immediately informed the auditor right after it occurred, the death of Armand. So I think they're trying to help us figure it out also, along with Chet and Sonia that have done a great job for us. But I think that's where we're at, Leo.
Okay. So I'd assume that when we get this final report that I guess we'll know more.
I think one of the issues, Leo, is we have the statewide audit that's been going on, and then we have the individual audit for the lottery. So sometimes it gets a little confusing to understand which audit they're talking about sometimes. It gets a little confusing, but that's where we're at.
Okay. All right. Thanks. That's all I have. Anybody else have any questions?
So legislative audit is doing this in conjunction with EP. Okay.
I would not say in conjunction,
Okay.
but they're at the same time.
Okay. So two separate auditing tracks.
Yeah, I'm not really auditing. I'm here to help.
Okay. All right, thank you.
Yeah, Commissioner Metropolis, I mean, the audit is something that just kind of is an annual ongoing thing. And so they would really be looking at primarily those fiscal year June 30th books at this point. And going through everything and making sure everything was up to snuff, so to speak. Um, and so yeah, Chet's trying to, through all this stuff, figure out what's going on and get the actual raw accounting updated to where it's sufficient to look at, like he's saying, to get it to a place where it can be reliable and that sort of thing. And it looks like, a lot of work is needed here. So yeah, those are two separate things.
Mr. Chairman,
Yeah.
a question. So in the audit and in previous audits, would they have picked up that these entries were delayed or hadn't been made? Would they catch that? And the accounting is saying that he didn't go back that far. So we don't know if this was an ongoing thing and nobody was picking it up until Armand was no longer with us and somebody else put eyes on this stuff. Or is this just simply a mistake that was made or not entered because of health issues and other reasons?
Mr. Chair.
Yeah, Brian.
Yeah, Leo and Commissioner Morris. So they tend to test certain parts of the items they look at every audit that they do. They may focus on a specific area. They should come up with any issues with that kind of stuff as they go forward. Like I said, I had a discussion with the legislative auditor before Armin's death also, because he was out for a significant period of time and expressed, potential concern. We wanted to make sure that we were doing what we needed to do. So as far as audits in the past have gone, Armin's come out clean on those. And so I think this is my perspective. And I believe that it has to do with him being sick here for the past 8 months, and missing work and not keeping up on things.
Yeah, and I mean, and Chet, in your experience, if you were, because you've done some audit work in the past, right? I mean, if you were auditing something like this, these types of errors would be fairly obvious, even if you were just focusing on, auditing specific aspects of the financials, like the Montana Millionaire or, a receivables process or something like that. I mean, these things, like you're saying, look pretty obvious, probably once you started digging through there.
Yeah, I'd confirm that. For example, journal entries is a required audit test in the audit standards. And so these big journals would have caught the attention of the auditors.
Yeah, and then I'm looking at the 2020, the audit that was completed for fiscal year 2023. And I guess it's telling that I'm looking at this report and it was dated October of 2024, and here we're sitting in April of 2025 and still, so maybe that's just one of the things they just had difficulty getting this thing figured out and wrapped up. So I'm assuming we're gonna hear more from them. But there was a couple deficiencies, but it was mainly on the, like I said, control based stuff, not necessarily. And it was addressed by Armand and the staff, but no major, like Brian's saying, that the raw financial stuff seemed to be okay for what that's worth. But obviously there's a lot to sort out here. So
Yeah.
Any other questions before moving on to the budgetary report? Okay, budgetary report, I'll keep pretty high level. Total revenues are 50% of your budget, last year it was 57% of your budget. So the difference there between 57 and 52% of your budget is again reflecting the unreliability of the revenue numbers that were posted in the financials that I prepared. For example, there's no Montana Millionaire revenues, and so that would account for at least a portion of why you're only sitting at 52% of your budget currently, where you were 57% of your budget last year. Direct game costs are 58% of your budget currently. Last year, this time, you were at 59% of your budget. And so that again reflects what I was saying earlier on the expenditure side, that the numbers are more reliable and more stable. And then again, for operating expenses, you're at 45% of your budget. Currently, last year, this time, it was at 46%. So again, a correlation between last year and this year for your expenses. And I guess that's all I'll say about the budgetary numbers at this point. Any questions before I move on to the next schedule? Okay, page 5, the analysis, your revenues and expenses by product. I'll highlight some percentages that are shown at the bottom of the report. So these percentages are the profit as a percentage of revenue for each of the products. Scratch had about 10% last year. It was at 12%, so fairly similar. Powerball is at 39%. Last year, it was at 37%. Again, not very much change. Montana Cash, however, I'm showing 14% of profit of revenue, if that makes sense. Your profit is 14% of your revenue this time, but last time it was 29%. Montana Millionaire shows a div error there. That's actually 0, right? Because no revenues were reported this period, but last time it was 28%. Mega Millions, 37% this time, 37% last time. Treasure Play, 3% this time. Treasure Play, 4% last time. Lucky for Life was 27% this time. It was 27% last time. Big Sky Bonus was 14% this time, as well as last time, also 14%. Lotto America, I'll pause here and say it was 49% this time, but it was 33% last time. And then Sports Bet was 8% this time, where it was 6% last time. So the three that I kind of paused there on was Montana Cash, Montana Millionaire, and Lotto America. Those are not aligning nicely with what we were doing last time. So that perhaps is indicative of more of these irregularities that I've been hammering on this entire time on the revenue side. Any questions before I move on? If you're none. After this, you have the notes. And what I wanted to communicate to the commission on the notes is I made a few updates. I took some liberty here, some professional liberties to make some style updates, some formatting updates. I know this sounds kind of trivial, but I at least wanted to mention that you're going to see maybe a smaller font. Well, that's me because I got a penchant for smaller fonts. And there was, however, some outdated data in the notes, and it was particularly in the pension and OPEB notes. And so I spent a little bit of time getting those updated in this schedule. So those are reliable numbers at this point for pension and OPEB. But I did want to mention that I made some changes to your notes and got a few things updated for the correct financial. I guess that's all I'll say on the notes, unless there's any other questions.
No, thanks for that.
And that concludes my run through of the financials. If there's any other questions, I'd be happy to.
Any other questions for Chet? So I guess what's the path forward and timeline here on, you know, are you I know you've got to be up to your neck with the legislative session, Chet, and your normal day job with the governor's office. I mean, I know you got Director Brown said you're looking at, you know, trying to find somebody in here to, you know, to take over permanently, but are you going to be helping out pretty significantly here over the next couple months? Is there anything that we can do as a commission to help with that?
Okay, yeah, that's a great question. So my intention is to provide the assistance that you guys need as you make your hiring decision for the next executive director. Hopefully that happens sooner than later, given you got a mess to clean up. I will be glad to provide any assistance to that next finance director as they request. I don't want to step on any shoes or anything like that. So I leave that to their discretion, how much assistance they would have from me, but I'll be glad to do that. Right. So I learned a few things in digging through your financials, and perhaps I can share that knowledge with the next finance director. As far as timeline,
Sorry, go ahead.
I would anticipate that you'll have these problems cleaned up by June 30th of 2025.
Okay. All right, yeah, well, just really appreciate your help with this. You know, I think it's going to really help in that transition, I think, to the new director, to have someone with your capabilities to be able to kind of, you know, not only get the stuff sorted out, but help with that transition. Because I don't know that, you know, in a case like this where you have something, you know, these health issues and then someone passing away, that's just a really difficult situation. So I just want to express my gratitude to you, Chet, for kind of stepping in here and helping out. Anything else from the commission? I guess we need a motion to approve this report so we can get this you know, lower transfer as it is, you know, to the general fund. So
If we do that, then we approve it.
was that a motion, John?
Yes.
Okay, sorry.
Second.
Okay, it's been moved and second. Any further discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Okay, financial report approved. I guess what's the next meeting is, I guess we've got that you know, set up for June. I guess we'll get know more information you know, at that time. Anything else? Any other questions or final comments from anyone?
What day?
Mr. Chair.
Sorry.
Brian is.
12th?
It is June, it's the current next scheduled commission meeting is June 12th, 9 a.m. And I think we also should pause for opportunity for
Oh, correct. Public comment. Is there anybody? Thanks for that, Phil. Anybody out there that has any public comment?
there's none in the room, and I'm not seeing any hands raised from the attendees.
Mr. Chair,
Yeah.
it's Brian again. Just make the offer if any of the commission want any further details. I'll be back in the office next week and I'd be happy to talk to any of you. Reach out to me and I'll be happy to help you.
Okay. Great. Thanks, Brian. I'll probably give you a call. All right, well, hearing no public comment and the financial report being approved, I'd entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Exactly.
All right. Well, thanks everyone, and thanks again, Chet. Really appreciate your work here, and good luck to everyone getting this thing going. Getting everything squared away.
Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you,
Thank you.
Chairman.
All right, bye.
Bye-bye.